Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Kiva here. Today we're going to be talking about things that I used to read in high school. I'm from the Caribbean. I'm a Jamaican, and being a part of the Caribbean, that means that you are mandatory to read literature books from 7 to 9. Some schools, you have to read it from 7 to 11. My school was from grade 7 to 9. I elected to do the course or do the class literature in grade 10 and 11. So when you're in grade 7 to 9, you are doing a lot of books along with poetry. For my first year of introducing myself, or the introduction to reading, like mandatory reading for a class, because before you just read on your own timing, it was not something that you were going to be graded on. Let me tell you, grade 7 was such a rough year for me, and being introduced to some very boring book. I mean, like, come on, a girl is moving for reading from, books that are, for me at least, moving from books that were like 50 page or less, and then you move into all of that, and then you're reading different like old English. I mean, like, come on, you were introduced to Shakespeare. That's one for sure. And I mean, everybody in the Caribbean can definitely say that they have read at least one Shakespeare book, or know at least one Shakespeare book out of their entire reading days in school. Grade 7, I was introduced to Macbeth, Silver Sword, A Cloud with a Silver Lining, and The Tales of Shakespeare. I think The Tales of Shakespeare was a collection of Shakespeare books. That's what it was. It had in the Midsummer Night Dream, which was not bad. I didn't read it. I listened to the discussion in classes, and I do nothing much about whatever that book name. The Tempest, those were books, and we did a Greek mythology book. And if I tell you, I didn't have a clue what that book was about. But grade 8, no, is where definitely my interest was spark when I start reading Secret Garden. And if you have listened to my introductory video, I definitely tell you that this was the age that I definitely fall in love with books again, or the type of books, grown folks books, that definitely was this moment. Start reading Secret Garden, and the discussions that we were having, I get so involved in there, and that was one of the reason that sparked my love for actually reading the discussion at such a tender age, and looking at things a little bit deeper than how we teenager would have looked at it. You're looking at how Secret Garden was such a very integral and very deep book, because looking into the environment that one person is in, and then you to change it gives you a whole different perspective, give your life a different trajectory. I mean, this young lady was in India, and the worst of things are happening there, and then she moved to England with her uncle, a whole different life. Then we start reading My Father, Son Johnson. This was another beautiful piece. As I tell everybody, this was one of my favorite books, My Father, Son Johnson. And it tells the story of how Mr. Johnson was on the best of life, living high life with his wife and his kids, and then things just went right down to the river bottom. And once you reach river bottom, you know that life is, at a very dismal point in time. And he worked so hard to actually make himself went back up on top. My thing was, as I tell everybody, I hated the ending of this book, but it was such a touching story. And I mean, like, grade 8 books were definitely crazy and interesting. I mean, the whole entire time in those discussions, I was like, Man, the man should have just left him in there to dead. I mean, like, it was such a beautiful story. And, I mean, it rivals any modern day story that I'm reading right now. But I will look into, I did Romeo and Juliet. And all I have to say is that Romeo was the villain of the story. He is the villain. We did poetry also. I have no clue what I was doing in that class with poetry, but went into grade 9 with the new spark of interest of reading books. We did some pretty interesting books, and the thing about our book selections is that they normally just get like probably some outside international authors like Charles Dickens. As I said, Shakespeare was very integral in our literature classes, and some others. But for grade 9, we did Romeo and Juliet again for some strange reason. We did Beka's Lamb, which was a nice story. I mean, come on. Grade 9 is where we went more in depth with literature. This was no longer the simple stuff like getting to the story and having discussions. This is where we get in depth. We learn for the themes. We're talking about author's tone. We're talking about where we learn puns, oxymoron, paradoxes, definitely personification and symbolization, and what flashback techniques and other techniques that the authors use in their stories. And I mean, like, reading Beka's Lamb was one of those situations where you learn symbolization is such an integral part in books, and you learn a little bit more advanced stuff for literature class in grade 9. The thing is the symbolization, I remember we did this in class. This lady was poor, and the only reason why we knew this lady was poor was because she did not have curtains. She did not have curtains at her window. That's the level of poverty that she was into. The poverty was written all over her because she didn't have curtains. It was just shining through her windows. I mean, like, when we did Beka's Lamb, that was such a beautiful story. I mean, like, come on. The lady, I was livid throughout these discussions when we found out that the young lady had, I think it was Beka's cousin, had sex in the cemetery. She gave up her virginity. And I remember saying this to the teacher, not even a bed, not even a friend. Oh, say don't bring her warm to a bed. You lose her virginity in the middle of dead people resting place. And that was just a big symbol at that moment that her relationship was doomed. And, you know, the whole discussion, Beka's story is that she ended up repeating the class that she was in, and it was a whole story of her building up herself, getting herself together, and making a better situation, making herself better. While her cousin was that was said to have a better trajectory than her, end up actually just throwing her life away because of the whole sex scene in the cemetery. She ended up being pregnant. And you know how it was. We learned about Belize at that time. I think Beka's Lamb was set in Belize also. We did Harriet's daughter. We did The Pearl. I mean, like, bad mind at his finest. People don't want to see her shine. That was what Pearl is. Harriet's daughter, Miguel Street. These were beautiful stories that we read. And most of these books that I just called at the end were Caribbean authors. They were written by Caribbean authors. Grade 10 going into it was a little more interesting that this time in my particular life, I've read one book that definitely says my favorite book of all time, and one of the books that I hate is on the top. I mean, like, it's one of my most hated books for me. I hate it. It is The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare. I mean, like, everything about this book, I just hated it. The fact that it had all English, the storyline, everything. Plus, I watched the adaptation and I remember somebody spitting on the Jew guy, and I was like, what? Just because. And I was like, yo, at this point in time, I've never looking myself that how much I was rooting for that villain to win. I mean, like, come on. Damn. Then we went into actually doing the fences, and I know everybody know the fences from that adaptation where Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. I mean, like, the book was, as I said, the discussions that we had in class, it was like real life. You're looking into it. That monologue that I remember, she was telling him that I was standing with you here also. He wants to think that he wants to get some outside of the routine. He should have brought his wife with him also. That's a story for a whole different time. Then we did Crystal for a Name. If you ask me what happens in that book, I cannot tell you. We did the Chrysalis, and that was like more, it was one of my first sci-fi, something along the book. Some deformities, some stuff happened, and I think it's a nuclear, people were deformed and all of that. It's just a whole thing. If I tell you what happened in most of these books, can't tell you. But I know within myself that going into literature or doing literature for 5 years, it affects me in such a positive way when reading my books now for fun. I mean, like, it has forced me to have a smaller DNF list, because somewhere in my mind is telling me that you need to finish read it. But at the same time, when I'm reading for fun, it does trigger me to actually want to analyze it. It just comes automatically. And for certain things, you know, I've always picked up on breadcrumbs so easily, because that's something that you had to do while you're in class. I remember reading Divine Rivals the other day, and the author was describing that how much candle was there and how the build-up was. And I was like saying, my God, this is in the indication before they even talk about poverty and where she was. This was such an integral part to show that this girl hasn't had electricity in such a long time. Things are not going right. So it's either between buying food or having light. So it's just one of those moments. And I remember, or another moment when I was reading Somebody's Wife, when our main character, the female lead, finally was going to have that naked moment with Dr. Green. And I remember she was like, this was such a beautiful moment. Most people just think like, okay, she's going to just do the thing. But for me personally, I look at it and I was like saying, this is such a beautiful moment for these two persons. This man was opening his life to this young lady, but she was still holding on. And this particular time, she had let go, become vulnerable with him, and just showing her flaws, showing that she is not perfect. And I'm offering this to you, and at this point in time, are you going to accept it? And this is such a beautiful moment for the both of them, where he's like, okay, I see you, sweetie, but these are battle scars, and it shows what you have been through to be here, and I'm very much grateful for your presence. That's it. And I mean, like, this was such a as I said, beautiful moment for them. Things like that, you definitely psychoanalyze them or just overanalyze each moment. It's not just for reading, just for fun for you when you have been through 5 years of literature. But I know within myself that a lot of other books out there that a lot of Caribbean students have read, because my brothers and my other friends definitely read Green Days by the River, Rising in the Sun, and one of the most popular ones, our favorite, is Young Warriors. They definitely, we have seen Killing Mockingbird. That's a very popular one for Caribbean students to read. Julius Caesar, Hamlet, and I think I wanted to read Hamlet, but I'm not even going there. I'm not a big fan of Shakespeare work, but I think within myself that I wanted to give myself like a chance for some of the books that I did not read in high school, like A Cloud with a Silver Lining by C.Everard Palmer. He wrote My Father, Sons of Johnson, and I think I would give that book a chance and see how it felt, or reread some of the books that I read in high school to think about how different my perspective are, especially like Beka's Lamb or My Father, Sons of Johnson again. Definitely, I think I need to reread some of them. And until next time, until next time, guys. So like, subscribe, and give us a thumbs up. And thank you for watching, guys. Bye.